Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm excited to kick off this presentation with a focus on a very timely and important topic. Today's presentation is titled Regulatory Great Wall: Why Chinese Electronics Giants Are Struggling to Raise Capital in India. We'll explore why this case is essential for students, faculty, and industry stakeholders alike. Throughout the session, we'll look at how regulations influence market entry, funding strategies, and long-term competitive positioning, especially in India's rapidly expanding electronics sector where policy and geopolitics intersect. So, let's dive in and understand what makes this case a must-learn for all of us. Now, let's delve into how international relations really shape our corporate strategies. First, geopolitics and business are deeply intertwined. Political stability, international conflicts, or alliances can influence market access and operational risks. Next, compliance challenges in emerging markets are a key consideration. These regions often have evolving regulations that require us to stay agile and informed. Regulatory risk is another major factor. Changes in laws or policies can impact our investments and day-to-day operations. Related to this are capital flow regulations and approval mechanisms, which determine how easily we can move funds across borders and secure necessary approvals. The FDI policy framework is also critical. Understanding the rules around foreign direct investment helps us navigate entry strategies and avoid potential pitfalls. Cross-border market dynamics and our competitive positioning are influenced by these international factors. How we adapt to shifting conditions can give us an edge. Finally, all of these elements feed into our overall international business strategy. When developing our core strategic themes, we must consider these geopolitical influences to ensure resilience and growth in a complex global landscape. Let's take a closer look at the current financial environment for these companies. Currently, parent company loans are essentially their only option for funding. They don't have access to equity capital infusion, which limits their options further. As a result, they are forced to rely on external commercial borrowings, or ECBs, to meet their financial needs. Now, there's an important regulatory factor to consider. According to Press Note 3 from 2020, the Government of India mandates prior approval for any investments originating from countries that share land borders with India. This approval process is still pending for many companies, creating a significant hurdle. So, what's really blocking these companies? Well, major Chinese electronics brands like Oppo, Vivo, Haier, Lenovo, and Motorola are operating in India, but they face a critical challenge. They cannot raise equity funding at this moment. To give some background, this situation is part of a broader context often called the capital freeze. Essentially, these companies are unable to access new equity investments, which constrains their growth and expansion plans. All of this highlights a significant challenge. Without access to equity capital, and with regulatory approvals pending, their ability to fund operations and scale is severely limited. This scenario underscores the broader impact of regulatory and geopolitical factors on business strategies and growth. As we look at this slide, what we're really seeing is the fundamental challenge of aligning growth ambitions with the harsh realities of regulation. On one hand, there's a huge market potential, but on the other, we're facing significant financial constraints that create a disconnect. This mismatch leads to what we call operational paralysis. For instance, funding proposals have been stuck for years, preventing us from making the kind of progress we want. We also can't increase our stake in Indian subsidiaries, which limits our control and growth opportunities. Bringing in new investors remains a challenge, and expanding our capital base is simply off the table for now. These strategic bottlenecks are compounded by the fact that Chinese companies dominate India's smartphone and electronics sectors. While they control a large part of the market, they face severe funding constraints themselves. This means even though there's market dominance, there's a lack of capital freedom to truly capitalize on that position. So at the core, what we're seeing is a business problem rooted in this inability to access the necessary capital, which stifles growth despite the clear market potential. This situation underscores the broader theme of how regulatory and financial limitations can hinder even the most promising market opportunities. Let's take a closer look at the current landscape regarding Chinese foreign direct investment, or FDI, in India. One of the major issues we face is a massive approval backlog. Because Chinese origin FDI now requires government clearance, this process often results in delays that can extend for years. It's a significant bottleneck that impacts investment flow and project timelines. Moving on to the post-2020 reality, the Indian government has shifted its approach to managing these investments. The key priorities now are managing geopolitical sensitivities, protecting critical sectors, and preventing hostile takeovers. These objectives reflect a more cautious and strategic stance aimed at safeguarding national interests. To achieve these goals, the government mandated that approval is required for all investments from border-sharing countries, including China. This policy was formalized with the introduction of Press Note 3 in April 2020. Before 2020, Chinese FDI flowed into India quite freely, especially into sectors like electronics, with minimal restrictions. It was a period of open investment, encouraging foreign participation. However, since the introduction of Press Note 3, the landscape has changed significantly. Now, Chinese investments face stricter scrutiny, and approval is no longer automatic. This shift underscores the importance of balancing economic openness with national security considerations, a trend that continues to shape India's strategic investment policies. Let's take a closer look at the market dominance and the challenges faced by these brands. Despite 8 of the top 10 smartphone brands in India being Chinese, capital movement into the country remains blocked. This creates a significant hurdle for businesses looking to invest and expand locally. For example, Hayer's attempt to infuse Rupee 1,000 crore has been stuck in approval limbo, preventing them from moving forward with their plans. This situation impacts the real competitive landscape, allowing Indian and Korean rivals to gain ground more easily as they face fewer restrictions. One of the key risks here is the lack of new product lines or expansion into new business verticals. Without fresh investments, innovation stalls, and companies can't keep up with rapidly evolving consumer demands. At the same time, Indian operations are under financial strain, facing liquidity constraints that hinder day-to-day growth and strategic initiatives. This cash pressure means expansion plans, such as new factories, are put on hold indefinitely. When capital is frozen, the ripple effects are felt across the entire operation: delays in capex, slowed product development, and ultimately, a weaker competitive position. All of this underscores how the current freeze on capital movement is hurting the entire ecosystem and limiting India's ability to thrive in this dynamic market. Without equity infusion, we often see margins shrink, and that can really impact operational efficiency. It's important to remember that access to capital isn't just about having money. It's a strategic advantage that can differentiate us in a competitive market. When we talk about building supplier ecosystems and component sourcing networks, we're essentially creating a robust foundation that supports innovation and cost efficiency. Localization initiatives further strengthen this by reducing supply chain risks and improving responsiveness to market demands. Continuous product development and technology upgrades are vital. Staying ahead means constantly evolving our offerings and integrating new advancements. Innovation and R&D play a key role here, fueling the development of cutting-edge products that meet future needs. Large-scale manufacturing infrastructure and automation systems are critical investments for scalability and efficiency. Expanding factories is often necessary to meet growing demand, but these investments require significant capital. And that leads us to why electronics manufacturing demands such heavy investment. Because to stay competitive, we need to ensure we have the right infrastructure, the right technology, and the right partnerships. Ultimately, access to capital becomes a strategic asset. It's not just a financial resource, but a key driver of growth, innovation, and competitive advantage in this industry. Let's delve into the policy goal of encouraging local manufacturing and job creation, while also ensuring we regulate external influence in strategic sectors. This approach is particularly relevant in the context of the post-2020 border tensions, which have significantly shaped our economic policies. In today's geopolitical landscape, there's a clear push to reduce dependency on single-country supply chains. This means we want to build resilience by diversifying our sources and strengthening local industries. The Make in India vision aligns perfectly with this strategy, aiming to bolster India's electronics manufacturing capabilities. By doing so, we not only create jobs, but also foster technological self-reliance. Ecosystem building is crucial. It involves developing a supportive environment for innovation, manufacturing, and infrastructure. At the same time, protecting critical technology and infrastructure sectors is vital for national security. Now, why is caution necessary? Because we need to strike a balance between fostering growth and safeguarding our strategic interests. India's policy perspective reflects a careful approach, encouraging growth domestically, while being mindful of external influences that could impact our sovereignty or security. Altogether, these points highlight a comprehensive effort to strengthen India's economic resilience and security in a rapidly changing global environment. So, moving on to the strategic outcomes, what we're seeing is that companies are managing to stay operational, which is good news, but at the same time, they're facing some challenges. Their growth trajectories are slowing down, and their risk profiles are higher than before. To adapt, many are increasing their focus on local assembly to meet the requirements of the production-linked incentive scheme. This helps in optimizing costs and complying with government policies. At the same time, companies are investing heavily in after-sales service and enhancing the overall customer experience. This is crucial for building brand loyalty and differentiating themselves in a competitive market. Another key area of focus is distribution. Strengthening relationships with Indian distributors and retail networks allows companies to expand their reach more effectively and ensure better market penetration. We're also seeing a shift towards local partnerships. Instead of relying solely on equity funding, companies are opting for external commercial borrowings. Although this approach comes with higher costs, it offers faster approval processes, enabling quicker strategic moves. Finally, these responses reflect a broader theme of strategic adaptation. Companies are adjusting their financing and operational strategies to navigate the complex landscape and maintain resilience in these challenging times. Let's take a moment to reflect on the key takeaways from this discussion. First, regulatory agility is just as crucial as market share when it comes to maintaining a competitive edge. Being able to adapt quickly to changing regulations can make or break expansion plans. Next, we see that compliance speed truly matters. The faster a company can respond to regulatory requirements, the better positioned it is to capitalize on new opportunities and avoid delays. Diversifying funding sources is another critical point. Companies should consider a mix of external commercial borrowings, joint ventures, and local partnerships to ensure financial resilience and flexibility. We also need to recognize that international relations play a huge role in investment decisions and approval timelines. Geopolitical factors can influence everything from project viability to valuation, so understanding this landscape is essential. This ties into the idea that country risk directly impacts financial risk, meaning that geopolitical tensions or policy changes can significantly affect access to capital and overall valuation. Finally, policy frameworks and regulations shape a company's growth trajectory. Being aware of and responsive to these policies can accelerate or hinder expansion efforts. In essence, these points highlight the importance of strategic agility, adapting not just to market conditions, but also to the evolving regulatory, geopolitical, and financial landscapes. All of these factors are interconnected and vital to a comprehensive growth strategy.